Okay, so today, problems 21 through 26 have to do with what's called the second derivative test. What the second derivative test is for is finding max and mins. Now, how we've been finding max and mins before, we would find that at a point, f prime was equal to 0, and then we'd say the slope before it was positive and slope after is negative. So we'd say it was a max because it changed from positive to negative. And we would say it's a min because f prime is equal to 0 at a point and the slope changes from negative to positive. Well, sometimes we can't look on either side, and sometimes we can only look exactly at one point. If that's the case, then we can use the second derivative test, which says the following. It says that if f prime at a point is equal to 0 and f double prime at that point is positive, or a plus and one right there yet, positive, then we have a minimum. Why, you may ask? We'll take a look. If f prime of c is 0, that means the slope is 0. That means the graph turns around at that point. If it is if the second derivative is positive, the concavity is up, so we get a point that looks like that, and that's why we get a min. So conversely, if f prime of c is equal to 0 and f double prime of c is negative, then correct, we have a max. It may seem backwards because we have a negative sign in the word max, but just means the graph turns around at that point C. And so you can see by the indicated orange lines what happens when those conditions are met. There's one other thing, though, about the second derivative rule. If f prime of c equals 0 and f double prime of c equals 0, then you can't tell. So it only works when you have a first derivative 0 and a second derivative that's positive or negative. So the questions in the text ask the following. They give you a function, and they ask us to see if we can tell the second derivative test if this point is a maximum or a minimum. So there's the original function, and I started taking the derivative of that function. So now I have to do the product rule here. So this is my u prime. That's my u, and this is my v. So, plus the derivative, erase this. 3ex. So u prime is negative 1. V is e to the x plus u, which is negative x, and v prime, which is e to the x. So I'm going to simplify that. F prime of x is 3 e to the x minus e to the x minus x e to the x. I don't have to simplify it any farther, but I will. There's 3 e to the x minus e to the x gives me 2 e to the x. This combines into that, minus x e to the x. And now I'm going to find the second derivative of the same one, so f double prime. X would be the derivative of 2 e to the x is 2 e to the x. Oh, I've got another situation. Here's my u, and here's my v. So u prime is negative 1, v is e to the x, plus u, which is negative x, v prime, which is still e to the x. And I have the same situation as before. I can simplify this to be e to the x minus x. Oop, I wrote that e like that. E to the x, because these two combined into 1. So I'm going to go to the next page and write these down. Okay, I take a pause because there is students in the vehicle behind me. This is 2e to the x minus x e to the x. And the second derivative is equal to e to the x minus x e to the x. I believe I did that right. Let's double check. I did. Okay, so when using the second derivative test, all you do is take the derivatives. They can be easier, they can be harder, and then we're just going to check. They want me to see if the value of x equals 2 is a max or a min. So I'm going to put 2 into f prime. And I get f prime of 2, sorry, equals 2e to the 2 minus 2e to the 2. And guess what 2e to the 2 minus 2e to the 2 would be equal to? That would be 0. So I've met the initial condition for the second derivative test. Now I'm going to fill it into the second derivative. F double prime of 2 equals e squared minus 2e squared, which equals negative e squared, which isn't the important part. The important part is that this answer is negative. So I know that x equals 2 is a max because the first derivative at 2, meaning the slope at 2, is 0. And the graph is concave up because from that negative sign. So therefore I know I have a max. So on the other problems, if you have trouble working out the derivative, you can always do the derivative in your calculator and just fill in the value they give you and see if you get the correct information. It's either going to be 0 and negative or 0 and positive, but if you get 2 zeros, the second derivative test doesn't work and you have to do it a different way. If you have any questions, I will talk to you about it tomorrow. Take care.